This episode of the Fight Within podcast is presented to you by Meguiar's. For over 115 years, Meguiar's has been carefully creating and producing advanced formulas with cutting-edge chemistry to deliver a show car perfect appearance. Whether you're showing on the fairway, finalizing your car for auction, or simply getting your beloved car ready for a weekend drive, Meguiar's is ready to help with their premium car care products to make every automotive surface look its absolute best. Meguiar's, reflect your passion. Make sure to visit them at meguiars.com.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Fight Within podcast. Today's guest is Mr. Wing Lam. He is the co-founder of Wahoos Fish Tacos. I was literally there last Wednesday.
I had a meeting. Often.
And yeah, we have one right by our house in Foothill / Lake Forest. And so thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time. And just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your backstory.
All right. Well, first of all, the reason the restaurant isn't your typical Mexican restaurant is because I'm not Mexican. So I joke about it. I'm actually full-blooded Chinese, but born and raised in São Paulo, Brazil.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I do speak the languages, right? And I do Portuguese and Spanish and a little bit of French still.
Really?
But yeah, luckily for me, of all places that my parents could have moved around the world. So they went from China to Brazil. Pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Right? And we were pretty happy there. And then somewhere in the mid-'60s, my dad got the bug to say, hey, there's a better life in America. So he came first. And we ended up here in the mid-'70s. And he opened a pretty good, successful restaurant on Balboa Island that's still there after almost 50 years, the Shanghai Pine Garden. So once he kind of got busy, then he called us and said, hey, I need a little bit of help. And there's like incidents in life that you can either, capture it or let it go, right? And if you don't know how to seize the moment, right? So for him, a Chinese restaurant in Orange County at the time was doing okay business. And luckily for him, he had a customer that, in the story that everybody knows, which is what we're going to go with, is that John Wayne wanted to have his birthday party there. So they closed the restaurant down because it wasn't that busy anyway.
That's cool.
And there's about 20 people. And John Wayne, quote unquote, got serenaded by my dad wishing him a happy birthday. So there's a picture that was, basically put up that's signed by John Wayne at the time. And from that moment on, we went from a restaurant that was literally being about 30 to 40% occupancy to 150% because there was like a half hour to an hour wait to get in. So my dad said, hey, you guys bring the rest of the family because I need some free labor. So off we came. So I was 14 years old. I remember literally vividly being a busboy at my dad's restaurant and a customer asking for a fork and a knife. And I turned around, ran to the kitchen. I'm trying to make the sound. And the guy goes, you mean a fork and a knife? And I'm like, yeah, but when you don't speak English, a fork and a knife is completely foreign to you.
Yeah.
So the first few words that I learned was like how to count 1 to 10.
Yeah.
And then kitchen utensils, like more water, napkin, because that's what they needed at the restaurant. So that's kind of like how I, jimmied. And then I went to high school. And then again, with all of us trying to assimilate to fit in. And we talked about like you coming from LA being the only Hispanic. Well, in Costa Mesa at the time, me and my brothers were the only Asian kids that didn't already grow up here. There was like maybe 2 or 3 that were from here. And they tried to put us next to them. I'm like, they speak English, no help. And then they say, hey, there's this other new group, the Vietnamese that were coming from Vietnam, right? Well, they look alike. So we went to them because Vietnamese and Portuguese sound nothing alike.
Yeah, literally.
So then it was like, hey, sink or swim. I'm like, okay, I got to start picking up. And this is, you got to laugh. I mean, I remember carrying around a Brazilian English dictionary that was the size of the old Yellow Pages. The thing was as big as my entire backpack, and it weighed a ton because I couldn't speak anything. And I didn't want to, so I always be looking up, right? It sounded like, and then I go in the dictionary to find it.
That's crazy.
And people used to always look at me and go, dude, the kid is cheating. Because the kid doesn't cheat. He's looking up what it means because he doesn't speak English, So it was one of those where it was really, really difficult. And I joke about, some of the other kids say, hey, if you want to learn English, you got to play sports because you'll get to spend an extra few hours every day at school. So I'm like, cool. I grew up in Brazil. Soccer was kind of beginning to be the new sport in America, except that the only kids that played soccer really well were the 7 Mexican kids I knew. I'm like, great, I already hang out with them all day because, I mean, the ESL class with them. I mean, every class with them because it was English with, whatever version of that. And I said, well, they said, you should try another sport that looks just like soccer, but it's played in a swimming pool. It's called water polo.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I'm like, sounds great. Because I'm not understanding. I'm like, okay, great idea. And I looked around and goes, okay, how hard can this be?
Yeah.
Well, it can be very hard if you can't swim.
one of the hardest sports. Even
Yes.
if you can swim.
If you can't swim.
Yeah.
So I remember, but then there's a part of the Asian culture that a little bit of pride, stubborn, whatever. I'm like, I'm not going to give up, right?
Yeah.
So I went for it, and then I still, I laugh about it because there are 7 kids that play at a time. Soccer is 11, right? And of the 7, 1 is the goalie, so there's actually 6 spots, right? And on the freshman team, when I started the freshman year, there were 32 kids that went out for the team, and I was literally ranked number 31.
Wow.
And I'm like, this thing sucks, right? But again, I'm like, okay, how hard can it be? So, little by little. And this is, again, those moments where you say, okay, either, flee or fight, right? And you always see I call it in the movies, all the playground, the bullies, right?
Yep.
Well, if you can knock out the biggest guy in the playground, you're home free.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've ever seen it work, right? It sounds really good in theory, right? So I'm like, well, let's see what happens. And luckily for me, at the time in 1975, one of the most popular TV shows in America was called Kung Fu with David Carradine, an old Western, black and white, where he's a Shaolin monk. And through the whole show, all the guys pick on him. At the very end, he rolls up his sleeve and beats up everybody, right? But again, that only happens on TV. And I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? Because in all of Southern California, there's only like 2 or 3 of us.
Yeah.
So if I hit him first, let's see what happens. And I did, and all the other kids goes, hey, that little kid over there, he's dirty and he knows Kung Fu. So all of a sudden I went from like being 31 to 25 to 20, and I'm like, I'm getting playing time.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, I'm pretty stoked on this. And then I started learning English, which helped a little bit. But I'm like, now I'm having a little bit of fun because I'm getting some play time. And then, my sophomore year, now I'm kind of speaking English and I'm kind of fitting in, right? I'm going to the beach. I'm doing all the things that everybody else can do. Could never play volleyball, which is the other thing, because I'm like, dude, this is stupid. I can't do it. But water polo, I can kind of get the hang of it. And my sophomore year, everything turned around because I was able to make a decision, say, I either can be a star in the Frost soft team, or I can go play varsity. And I said, you know what? All my classmates that are the cool kids are playing varsity. I might as well. And I had no idea the difference in size, speed, everything just changed because everybody was bigger. Because now you're, 15 years old playing against 18-year-olds, and there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
And these guys literally beat the living tar out of me, but I never backed down because I figured, what's the worst that can happen, right? So luckily, I never got any broken nose or anything like that. And I gave out as much as they gave it to me.
Yeah.
And I earned the respect of all the seniors. And they're like, this kid can take it.
That's
right?
cool.
And I'd be the one in timeout goes, hey, let me switch with you and I'll take the bigger guy. And they'd be looking at me and goes, you want the big guy? I goes, yeah. And they're looking at me and goes, go for it. And then I hold my own.
Yeah.
And because I could play dirty, right? And in sports, what they can't see, they can't call.
Yeah.
So that kind of said, you know what? Hard work, all this was beginning to pay off. And I ended up, playing another 3 years of varsity, having a great time, went on to college, and San Diego State of all places, right? And the thing that we found through all the road trips and the fraternity shenanigans is fish tacos.
Yeah.
One, it's good and inexpensive, unlike beef, which is a little more expensive.
Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, the ocean is right here. It's got to be good. So we did all the road trips. So it was a queso Pacifico for literally $5 and fish tacos for like 25 cents. So we're like, dude, this is the best thing ever. And then upon graduating, went to do the right thing. Went to work for Rockwell International, and really fun. And I'm like, okay, after a few years, it was, maybe not as much fun as I thought.
Yeah.
And my kid brother Ed was coming out of college, and we started talking. I went, hey, what are you going to do? He goes, corporate America may not be, the right thing for us. And he goes, remember all the surf trips? Because he was still going down there and surfing. I was already out. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Well, wasn't anybody doing that here?
Yeah.
And we said, you know what? We should have a place. And if you look at all the TV shows, right? From the Happy Days, it was Arnold. When you look at Cheers, there was the bar,
Yep.
right? When you look at the Peach Pit in Beverly Hills, there was always like the central place
Yeah.
that people hung out at, right? And I'm like, we need to build that for surfing. And we all looked at it and go, yeah, this sounds great, but what do we know about that? But he goes, hey, we know a little bit from my parents, right? And bottom line, a lot of hard work. And we remembered, hey, we got to have like one of these John Wayne kind of things happen to us.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, if we can get like a really cool surfer, hopefully that will help, right? So we went out, fall of '88, you know, we opened a store. I'm like, oh my God.
Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa, yeah, right by Whole Hospital. And at the time, that's where Quicksilver, Billabong, all the surf companies
Yeah.
were at. And we're like, dude, there's like nobody here. And if you know anything about the West Side, there was El Toro Bravo. There's other places,
Yeah.
Glory. There was like 3 or 4 of the Mexican restaurants already. And they're all looking at me and go, dude, did they forget to tell you you're not Mexican? What are you doing opening this kind of food? Because, well, this is a little hybrid of all the surf foods we've eaten around the world, right? From Hawaii to Mexico and Brazil. And they all looked at it and goes, okay, whatever, right? So the menu kind of took a little bit of time to kind of get used to it because people are like, well, I want my fried fish tacos. No, this is grilled, a little healthier. And all of this, it was like going uphill. And 3 months in, like January of '89, we got an opportunity to do a trade show party.
Okay.
And the same thing in life. This is like your first thing. If somebody ever asks you, can you do this? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Then go figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't care if you're sweating your whatever off, figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? Because nobody's going to give you a second chance. Right? So that's what we did. Because have you ever done a catering? We go, hell yeah, we done it. And then we had to go figure it out. So we figured it out how to do it, literally within a week. And we hosted all of these buyers from the trade show at Billabong, which is literally 2 blocks away from us. And they basically crushed it, right? People were like, oh my God, these tacos are amazing. We literally set up like a little palapa outdoor, like taco stand.
Yeah.
And which is what we did in the restaurant. So people thought it was hilarious. And then they asked us, hey, would you like to come to the trade show? And we're like, sounds like a great idea. We went to the trade show and walked around, and all of the brands that I had seen in my customer, all the guys that were coming in, goes, oh, you work for Vision. Oh, you work for Quicksilver. And they said, hey, I heard that you guys did an event for Billabong yesterday. I'm like, yeah, we did. Because all the buyers have been coming by and telling us how great the tacos were. Well, can you do a video premiere? I'm like, oh, yeah, we can do that. Can you do a surf contest? Oh, yeah, we can do that. So instead of waiting for the customers to come in the doors, we went out and found them. But the major issue was all of these brands, they didn't have a budget for hospitality because that didn't exist. I mean, for football games, you know, tailgates on, it existed. But for surfing, skateboarding, that didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's basically BY your own whatever sandwich, right? So we set up and we asked all the brands, because if you don't have a budget, you make T-shirts and shorts. My crew, we'd love to wear this stuff. Can we get some of that? And they're like, you want to trade? I'm like, yeah, can we trade? And they're like, great. We started bartering. So my guys in the kitchen had the coolest outfits, you know, from like you look like a surfer, except we weren't,
Yeah.
you know, necessarily surfers. So as soon as we did the first one with Billabong, the Quicksilver guys go, dude, I'm not going to come to my favorite restaurant and be served by a bunch of guys wearing my competitors' clothes. So let me bring you some stuff. So all of a sudden you have the 2 biggest brands in the world. And at the time there were 4. Gotcha and Stussy were the other 2, right?
Yeah.
And we had friends that worked over there, and they're like, what's up with that? I'm like, well, you got to bring us some swag. And they did. And we said, well, but we'll trade. We'll help you do your parties. We'll do. So I ended up getting business and people becoming aware of this was a place to go after surfing or before surfing. So what started out as one sport evolved into skateboarding, snowboarding, and everything else. Because there's this huge crossover between all the brands and all the sports. So, you know, O'Neill, Quicksilver, they sponsor skaters, surfers, BMX, all the different athletes. So it started with just surfing, and it evolved. And luckily for us, nobody was either smart enough or stupid enough to go to the mountains, to the skate parks. We were the only people who said, yeah, we'll come up. And this is the day there is no X Games. There wasn't anything like that. So we just did it because, one, these were our customers, and they would see us. And the kids were like, oh, my God, there's free food here. There's never been free food in anything we've ever done. So after they'd be done competing, they could eat free food because they didn't realize this is all on trade, right? And nobody ever asked us. They said, "Oh my God, there's a hospitality area for the athletes,"
Yeah.
and we allowed the parents to come. So we didn't know that this is the beginning of sport marketing, whatever you call it today. But little by little, word got out because, oh my God, if you're gonna have a contest, you gotta have these guys come,
Yeah.
right? And either they're smart enough to do it or they're dumb enough that they don't know what they're doing. So we started doing concerts. I mean, back in the day, Blink-182. I mean, all these bands that were all kind of starting up when they would do these shows, local shows, they're like, hey, we're hungry. He goes, and again, they were sponsored by the same clothing companies. So we're like, we don't care. We got more shirts, more shorts, more whatever.
So it's just something that like organically
It just
happened.
became, and nobody else was interested at the time in our space. It wasn't until I call it the Do Tour started, the X Games started, that Taco Bell and all those companies goes, whoa, there's something here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I hate to say, I'm not sure if they saw it or their kids like that.
Yeah.
Can we go and hang out at the beach with these guys?
Yeah.
You know, because there's all these shows there, you know, reality shows are starting. And so we just happened to ride it as it was becoming, you know, I call it a legitimate sport.
Yeah.
Because if you look back, you know, 30 years ago, the only kids that skated or surfed or did any of those sports were the kids that weren't good enough to do the real sports. They didn't have the bulk, the size, whatever,
Yeah.
to play football or basketball. So they kind of took these minor sports. Well, now all these minor sports are in the Olympics. I mean, it's legit, and these guys can make some serious money. And it's more about agility than strength and size, you know.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, so we kind of got to ride it, and then the growth basically were customers saying, "Hey, I'm tired of driving from Laguna all the way to Costa Mesa," and I jokingly said, "Well, find us a spot," and they did. We get down there. That's the second location, and then the people from the east side of Costa Mesa, you know, said, "We're tired of driving to the west side. Can you open one here?" So we found, you know, so the customers basically dictated probably the first 20 stores of like, "I'm tired of driving from here to there." And we were, okay, Lake Forest, you know, Huntington Beach. We would just kind of grow it. So it was like 13 years, 13 stores, kind of a deal. And again, we thought, okay, I had that John Wayne moment because I had all these professional surfers eating in my restaurant, and that created this crazy, you know, thing that people go, "Oh my God, did you see?" And these were legitimate world champions in my restaurant. So I didn't find one; I found like all of them.
Say a ton of them.
You
Yeah.
know, so then I didn't just find the surfers, I found the skaters, I found the snowboarders, I found all of those guys. And I thought, okay, we're in a good spot and we're like cool in the action sports. And in 2000, we had an opportunity to do a commercial for Merrill Lynch. And that changed everything because Merrill Lynch sent out a memo through their broker that said, "Hey, we're looking for businesses small businesses that, you know, can tell a funny story." So they called us, we did the deal, and then they were talking to my brother Ed, and my brother Ed was like, "What's the big deal?" And he goes, "Yes, there's 3 of us. Look at the photos," because we submitted our resume, and whoever's on the other end, on the creative side, goes, "I don't get it. What's so special? You guys make tacos." And my brother literally repeated the tagline for the campaign, which we didn't know that's what the tagline was. It was about the American dream. And my brother basically said, "Hey, where else in the world can a Chinese guy say, make Mexican food?"
Seriously.
Only in America is, you know, so they're like, "Oh my God." So they're looking at the pictures, you know, that we sent them. And there's 3 Asian surfers. And at the time, Merrill Lynch's campaign was the concrete cement wave, asphalt wave in Wall Street.
Yeah.
And it was just like this wave, you know, that would come. But they were the bowling, the China shop, but they wanted to be more for everybody, not just the Wall Street wealthy. So they're like, who represents the American dream better than 3 Asian kids making Mexican food?
That's so true.
Right?
That is so true.
So we went from like 13 years, 13 stores. In the next 13 years, we're up to like 50 stores.
Holy smokes.
Because our numbers went through the roof. All of a sudden, you'd be walking down the street, people would be like, "You're the guy in the commercial." I'm like, "Yeah." And even after, 20 years later, I still get that. "Oh, yeah, I remember." And most of the time, they confuse us with the American Express commercial because it was so good for us, But, so again, these 2 moments, so not only do we have some really cool customers that we became really good friends with,
Yeah.
all of a sudden we have this national spotlight shining on you. And I believe for Orange County, we were probably one of the first companies that were ever in something that was national. right? So you couldn't turn on the TV for that year without seeing us on TV. It was
insane.
absolutely insane. It ended up being, I call it, imagine putting about $60 million in marketing behind your company. It just,
And they did it all.
and we got paid on top of it. Because
really?
this is before the internet days, so we had to get a SAG card, like actors, that we were in a commercial.
Yeah.
So each one of us got paid about 20 grand, which is pretty amazing, including my
yeah.
mom and dad. So we're like, okay, they're paying us to tell us our story on national TV. This thing doesn't suck. And then from that, we ended up for the next, I think, 3 or 4 years of winning just about every award under the sun, for the Entrepreneur of the Year. All these amazing things that just kept shining the spotlight on us. So all of this, plus the fact that we now were very involved in all the local charities, it just became this wave where literally all the magazines, newspapers, TV, radio, everything was about us, because they're like, these are kids that are involved, they're doing the right thing, right? So all the things that we talk about now, it's like, it sounds so easy, but it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Somebody recognized it. And I now think about it where, I spent the better part of my first maybe 15 years or so in America, or 20, trying to fit in. I spent the last 30 trying to be totally the opposite.
Yeah.
Because now they said, somebody, like in the song, it's hip to be square. So the bottom line is, it's now more than ever hip to be different, because you stand out. People remember you.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not only remember you physically, but by your actions, if you're really good at what you do. So I'm always amazed that some people are like, dude, why don't you take advantage of it, right? Not only do you make a great product, you got a great story, you're also different. Embrace it, right? Because back then, all the Asian kids were the non-sporty, nerdy, whatever. Now it's kind of like, okay, it's okay, right? So you see Fast and the Furious, you see a lot more, roles that people are a little bit different. You're not just, stereotype, but to be this. So I look at everybody and I go, dude, whether you're black, Hispanic, whatever you are, right? Embrace it. Because guess what? There's pretty much nothing you can do to change it anyway. So you can go home and cry all you want, or you can go out and just, slay some dragons. And that's what. So I found myself surrounded by guys that, want to go out there and make a difference. So when I met this guy, I'm like, you're crazy. I mean, what are you doing in a coffee business? Right? But then he's got a great story. I'm going, well, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it a story? And like you said, hard work.
Hard work, and you got to find the lane that you want to be in, and just be good at it, and, do the right thing, give back, embrace all the differences, And that's at the end of the day. So my brothers and I, we laughed. I mean, we've been in business 32 years now. We have stores all over the country.
Yeah, how many stores do you have now?
We got about 60 stores.
Goodness.
We have one
That's
international, one in Japan, and we laugh. Because we're like, dude, who would have thought, right? And again, so that's that. And then the what's really like the ability to adapt, because I had to do it once. So when the pandemic hit and 80% of the people are now going back to their offices, we lost 85% of our sales, because we're primarily a lunch destination,
lunch.
right? So I figure if they're not here, just like my customers 32 years ago weren't in my restaurants, they're at the beach. So I said, they're in the hospitals, because all the frontliners, all the distribution, the supermarkets, they were busy.
Yeah.
So I called my vendors. I said, hey, all that money that we had to set aside to do stuff this year, let's refocus and let me go deliver food to the Northgate Distribution Center, to El Gigante Distribution Center, to Smart and Final. They're like, what? I'm like, they're busy. The truck drivers are busy. And you have this money just sitting there, right? That we're going to use it for marketing. I need to survive. And if you will pay me a little bit of money to deliver food, and I don't care what time of the day, it'll help me keep my stores going. And they're like, okay. So nobody understood it. But then all of a sudden, I got all my other friends that say, hey, remember all that money we had set aside for these charity events? They all got canceled. Give me some of that money, and I'm going to take it to go feed the hospital workers, the police, and the fire. And you guys come with me. So we pivoted last, basically, March. By April, we were already kind of getting them, but we didn't have a lot of money. And then by May, things started falling into place. As fast as we could find a hospital that needed food, we could find somebody that said, I got some money, let me, sponsor that for you.
Yeah.
So this machine started, and we got money from Subaru of North America, kind lending. All of a sudden, people are like, "What?" And Loan Depot, and so what's the paint? Bear Paint gave
Bear
us
Paint,
money.
yeah.
So they're like, "You're going out and taking care of the frontliners. Well, here's a little bit of money."
Yeah.
So it wasn't about making money; it was about staying relevant and keeping my staff busy.
I say staying alive.
Staying
yeah.
alive.
I remember watching through social media.
Yeah.
This guy was all over the place. And the cool thing about you too is, I was saying it before, but you're just such a genuine person, and it's probably played out into why you guys are where you at. But you, even through all the busyness and chaos, there were still times where he called me, "Hey Ben, do you guys need any more of like the PPE equipment or personal masks and stuff like that? Do you need shields? Do you need this?" He's like, "If you need it, I got connections. Let me know." And this was at a time where like you couldn't get it.
Oh yeah.
And you want to protect your staff and all that other fun stuff, but I think that's something that's really cool, and I'm assuming you've probably taken that throughout your whole career, but you've never forgotten like where you came from and those little things. Like I'll never forget watching you be so busy and still take the time to like call me and be like, "Hey, do you need help with this?" And it's like those connections, those genuine connections that I think people see.
Oh yeah, even the police department. My buddy John Lewis, who's the chief at Newport Beach, everybody when I got the mask, they all laughed. No, what are you doing? And then a week later, they couldn't get them. Yeah. I'm like, remember you guys were all chuckling? So let me help you get your mask. And then the same thing with like the hand sanitizer. All the things that you, at first, they all looked at me and go, "What are you doing with that shield?" I'm like, "You're going to need one of these." All of a sudden, you can't get them.
Yeah.
Right? So I kind of became very resourceful because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but I needed to be safe. Because I'm going out to the hospital. I'm going out everywhere. So I'm like, I want to have my gloves, my face mask, my shield. I'm going to have everything on because I can't afford to get sick. And before I knew it became the mandate. Yeah. So I became the go-to guy for all the supplies because when nobody could find anything, I knew how to get the personal size, the gallon size. I knew where all that stuff was.
Yeah.
And I share with all my friends. I'm like, "Hey, if you need it, call this guy. You need it, And it became kind of like this really cool, just sharing the resources, not trying to hog it, right? And then and also at the same time, I found what I call it complementary companies like Yogurtland became my dessert, sidekick because all her stores were closed. Then Hint Water, Monster Energy Drink, Cliff Bar. I mean, we all kind of say, "Hey, I can bring you this, I can bring you that." So when we showed up to the hospitals, people are like, "Oh my God, we're not just getting a meal, we're getting a snack, we're getting a sweet, we're getting a beverage," right? And then Vans was like, because I knew that as soon as the U.S. Open got canceled, I knew that Steve would have just piles of swag that normally would be given away, the bandanas, the trucker hats. So every week I call him, goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "What do you need?" I go, "Nothing, but can I get more bandanas?" He goes, "Come and get them." So literally, as of today still, the Vans corporate office may have 5 people working there, and the 5 are security people. They're just, everybody's working remotely. So every few weeks when I need stuff, I'll call Steve and I go to the front desk. There's a box of trucker hats, wallets, whatever, because we bring it to the nurses, the kids, whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. The smile on the people's face when they get a pink checker bandana.
I know, that's so cool. I think it's why. So you 60 stores.
Yeah.
How in the heck do you find time to still do stuff like this?
Well, you make time. I mean, literally, like, that's why I panicked last week.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm heading to train at Staples Center and I'm supposed to be here." And he goes, "No, it's next Tuesday." Well, okay, thank God.
I know, he called me freaking out. I was like, no.
Because I was going to have to postpone it. But it happens, right? You just make time. Time management is critical, but luckily there's all the apps that can kind of remind you where you got to be.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, within the last few months, there's been a couple of days where I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm supposed to be here. I'm over there." Because I say yes, and then all of a sudden, as I'm driving there, I'm like, "Oh my God, you're supposed to be over here." So then I'll call the other guy, "Hey, sorry, we're going to have to reschedule."
Yeah.
There's been a few of those,
Yeah.
but the majority of the time, it works. Because there's nothing really urgent, but, people want to talk to you about something, So I'm like, "Yeah, let's,
Sure. Where does that organic care for others come from?
I don't know if it was through survival or what. But it's one of those in life, most of us, not all of us, I would say, are going to be the center, the star.
Sure.
We're probably going to be on the cast, right? I call it the bass player of the band. We're not going to be the lead singer, right? So knowing that that's where you're good at, I always say, what? If I can make everybody around me become, in their world, the lead singer of whatever it is that they do, chances are I'll get to play bass with them a lot longer, right? So it wasn't about me looking good at their expense, was the other way around. And people looked at me and go, don't you want to be the lead? I goes, I just want to be on that stage. I don't even have to be the lead, right? And every now and again, but people goes, but you are the lead. Goes, yeah, but I'm still just happy to be, one of the band members. And that's always been my thing. And whenever people look good, they can't help it. Because, dude, this wouldn't have never happened if Wing didn't help me.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I always take care of him. So it wasn't like I'm going to do this so I can get this, but it becomes one of those where people always want to do things because they know that I'm a team player.
Yeah.
And together we're going to get things done much better, quicker. So everything that we do, it just becomes better, right? So I look at things before I got involved and I'm like, okay, that's good, but what about doing it this way? And they're like, well, that's too much work. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's why it's going to be better.
Yeah.
And then that little extra effort, everybody that appreciates a better product, a better experience, a better anything is going to go, wow, how did that change? Because, well, there's this guy, Wayne, that came along that was tired of eating a cold bologna sandwich. He said, what about eating a hot fish taco, right? And it was, but somebody's got to cook it. Well, Wayne is willing to come down and cook it, right? You don't just go to the grocery store and grab a bunch of things and put it together.
Yeah.
But, so that's the difference, right? Like the way you make coffee. I mean, it'd be much easier just to go, well, here's a can, here's this, right?
Yeah.
But when you can make it, they're like, wow, this is so much better than what I can do at home. And then people come out.
Yeah.
So you got to give people a reason, right? And all of a sudden things are happening and people are like, wow, that was really good. The cookie. Anything that you do, don't settle, right?
Yeah.
So all the people that settle eventually figure out, well, why am I getting kicked out? Because there's a better guy, right? That's why you're getting kicked out. But if you didn't settle, you're always striving to be a little bit better, you'd probably still be around.
But then where does that motivation come into play for you, knowing that you're like, okay, 13 years, 13 stores, cool. All right, now we got the Merrill Lynch spot. We got national spotlight. We're doing all these cool things. All this attention's on us. Why didn't you ever feel like you needed to settle? And where does that motivation come from to just want to keep going or to get better?
It's when you surround yourself with people that are always striving to be better. Like, I think golfing is a crazy one. No matter how good or bad you are at it, most guys are terrible.
Yeah.
Right? So the guys that are good for a reason because they practice a little bit more.
Yeah.
So unlike anything else in life, like surfers, you strive to be a little bit better, but at a certain point, you kind of like, you don't hire a professional coach, you're kind of done.
Yeah.
This is about as good as I'm going to get, and you kind of settle, right? But in golf, it's the only thing I've ever seen, and maybe a little bit in tennis too, where you take lessons because you strive to be a little bit better. And so I think if everybody took that attitude, it doesn't mean you have to hire a coach. Just strive to be better, right? Don't settle. Because when you settle, you're kind of like, you're in your little zone, and you start surrounding yourself with people that are very happy being where they're at. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, why can't I get to here? Well, because you're not hanging out with anybody that's going up to that level, right? So I always tell people that if you can hang out with people that are professional athletes, musicians, you'll never be around a musician who goes, oh man, that tour was awesome, I'm never going to do another one. No, they can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah.
Right? And same with football. They can't wait to play in the next game.
Yes.
No matter how good or bad you did in this one, there's another one, right? So when you start being around people like that are always thinking, it's okay, I want to rest in my laurels a little bit, enjoy the moment. Don't forget to enjoy it, but strive to do a little bit more. Right?
Why do you think there's so much pride in business, though? Being like I talked to Ben, and Ben is doing his business coaching, and I think it's a great idea because he's had a successful business so he can help others. And the heart for it is helping others. Yeah. But there's a lot of business people that are like, no, I don't need a coach. He's talked about it on previous episodes, how he's been there. But if you look at legends like Kobe, LeBron, Agassi, any sport you can think of at the top level, they've had coaches.
Numerous coaches.
Coaches, And the thing is it's also kind of nice to mentor because there's something about the gratitude you get from somebody who's thankful for them avoiding the mistakes that you made or whatever it is, or saying, oh my God, I did this so much better because I heard that one thing that you told me to do and that helped me avoid this or whatever. So there's a certain amount of gratitude you get which energizes your soul. And that's a currency that most people don't understand because, well, wait, I didn't get paid. Because you don't understand. Gratitude and appreciation, all those things is a different kind of currency that it enriches a different part of your brain.
Yeah.
But
100%.
if you're a selfish person, it doesn't matter. All you care about is the money. And at a certain point, you realize, wow, nobody likes me, right? Or whatever. And because you don't have any of that. You don't appreciate, and people don't appreciate you, right? You didn't give back, so you don't get anything back. So this whole karma thing, this whole energy thing, what goes around comes around, right?
Sure.
And if you put out a little bit comes back. If you put out a little bit more, a lot more comes back. So this constant ebb and flow of energy, positive vibes, gratitude, all that, it fuels your soul. And that's, at the end of the day, if you're not like happy, right, that chances are because you're so, I didn't do this, I didn't get that. And instead of like, oh my God, these people are happy because of what you may see, the guidance I gave them, whatever I was able to give them, right?
Yeah.
So that comes back.
I
And
think
that's
that's so cool.
And it's all about the sharing. And again, it goes back to that team player attitude, right?
Yeah.
You can only win if the whole team wins. You can't win by yourself in a team sport. And most people don't understand that.
Yep.
And they're like, oh, but I can do so much better. I'm like, you could, right? But basketball takes 5. If the other 4 sit on the floor, I don't care how good you are, you're never going to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think that's what people forget too, and it's cool hearing it come from you, right? Like I had no idea you grew up in Brazil. I didn't even know, from right now I could not tell you that I didn't know English was not
Oh, no.
in your
yeah.
first 15, 16 years of
No,
life.
no, no.
Like
Nothing.
But I think that's something, especially in today's culture and world, that hearing your story goes so much further than, someone that grew up here and was handed everything, right?
Yeah.
Like you literally said, and I'm a huge fan of this just because I'm Mr. America. I believe we live in the greatest country on the face of this earth. Like, yes, we have issues, but we live in the greatest country on this freaking planet.
Yep.
And hearing like the American dream, like
yeah.
your family lived it, not just like you and your brothers, but
Yeah.
your parents.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I was just like sitting here listening. I'm like, dang,
I
this is really cool.
I was like, should I ask something?
I know, I
'Cause
just wanted you to
want to
keep-
listen.
Yeah,
That
I
was
wanted you
dope.
to just keep talking.
Yeah.
It's really cool to hear like you guys came here with the idea and a purpose of creating a better life.
Yep.
And not only have you created a better life, but just with Wahoo's, not even your parents' restaurant, but just Wahoo's alone, I don't think anyone thinks of Southern California without thinking of a few restaurants,
Yeah.
right? In-N-Out,
Yep.
Wahoo's.
Yep.
Like maybe there's obviously a couple more,
McDonald's.
but they're kind of yeah. But you're literally the culture of Southern California,
Yeah.
and you've been able to 60 locations. That's several hundred employees, if not more.
thousands, yeah, thousands of employees.
And it's that is just so cool listening.
And like I said, we're blessed to have, always surround ourselves with amazing talent, right? And that's going right back to the people that are like, okay, I made my business. I'm not going to share the information. I'm going to hoard everything. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand. Like they keep saying transparency. Well, that's because people want to know, right? But it's not they want to know. But if you drive around in a Bentley and you have a couple of coffee shops, pretty sure your employees are going to go, dude, somebody's making a lot of money doing this.
Yeah.
So guess what? If the boss doesn't care, I'm going to start doing this. And all of a sudden you're like, why is my business going sideways? Because you're not sharing the love.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're making a lot of money, maybe you should pay your employees more. Maybe treat them better. I mean, there's different things you can do. It doesn't mean hand everything out, but maybe do a little bit in the community. Do things to better everybody around you.
Yep.
So that, instead of you driving a Bentley, you can drive a Mercedes and still be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and still have
Yeah, so these are the things that I think in life, the haves and the have-not, the bigger that gap is, the more people want to see you fall, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to the top because how did you get to the top? On all of our shoulders.
Yeah.
And you're still like making fun of us. You're not treating us right. And I'm like, you're going to get it eventually. It's just a matter of when and where, right? But I just look at it because it is a capitalistic society. I came up with a better mousetrap than you, so therefore I can make more money. That is true, but it doesn't mean you can't share it. And that's where the part,
and just be a decent human being.
Being a decent human being. I mean, like power corrupts. And again, America, it is the greatest country, because there's at least the opportunity if you want to do it.
Yeah.
In other countries, it's so corrupt that the odds of you moving classes are almost non-existent unless you marry one.
Yeah.
Right. But there isn't the opportunity like there is in America.
Yeah. That's what people need to understand. There's always opportunity.
Yeah, it is. There's corrupt people everywhere. There's bad people
100%.
everywhere, and there's takers everywhere. But you just gotta kind of figure out who they are and just stay out of their lane. You know.
So 60 restaurants. What's on the horizon for Wahoos before we wrap up?
Basically, right now, the group that I started to make all the deliveries is called the California Love Drop. All my friends and I are still moving because as the hospitals get better, the food banks are not. There's more and more people that need supplies, so we're constantly doing that, and we're working with other nonprofits and trying to make their events better, whatever that means, right? And in Wahoos, we're trying to get workers back, and we're still having that hard time. I'm sure we'll all have, because the government has no way of deciding who needs the money and who doesn't. So everybody's in the same bucket. So as long as you're getting more than what you used to get for working, there's no incentive to go back to work. Right? So that's the dilemma. I mean, we're all in the same boat. So while I wait for the offices to reopen so we can get that lunch business back on track, I'm out there, slinging deliveries, and I've become, de facto the delivery guy for our company. And I'm out, 3 to 4 days a week making deliveries, and it helps us kind of, bring more customers in.
Yeah.
It reminds people that we're still open, and thanks for helping out the other day when we were both doing the same thing for the Wyland Foundation. So we're doing all these things to help, and that's what we got. And in the meantime, landlords now have gotten a really good dose of reality. So maybe we'll be able to get some nice rates, to come back and sign new leases.
Yeah.
But we just got to get the offices back to work first.
Is there a magic number of location you guys want? You're just going to keep riding the wave?
Yeah, we're just going to keep riding the wave. Yeah, I think at a certain point, as long as, like I said, my youngest, who's going to be 6 this summer, he's enjoying, coming with Dad to do things.
That's cool.
So when that is no longer cool, then maybe it's time to get out. But probably at least another 10 years before anything happens.
I just wanted to say thank you personally. You talked about like the gratitude. Like since I've met you, I've thought nothing but just this guy is genuinely one of the nicest humans I've ever met. It doesn't go unnoticed. I feel like every person I've ever met that does know you says the same thing and has the same feeling. So what you are preaching, you are practicing, which is awesome. And yeah, thank you so much. Do you have any other questions or?
No.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Wing, you are the man. I don't know if I've ever told you. I met you. I don't even know if your brother remembers Ed.
Yeah.
We were mentors together through a Vanguard business panel.
Yes, he mentioned something like that.
Yeah, so that was years ago, but I got to sit next to one of the other co-founders of Wahoos, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't belong sitting next to these guys. Like, I'm just like some no-name guy.
Nah,
but
you always belong. That's the key. Don't ever say you don't belong, because we all belong. We belong in different capacities. That's all.
Yeah,
some people can do more, some people can do less, but as long as everybody's contributing something.
That's true.
Right? That's the key. You don't ever feel like, oh my God, I don't deserve it. I'm like, yeah, everybody deserves it.
That's right.
We're all
That's
here.
good.
Well, where can people find you or the foundation?
Social media.
Social media, Wahoo's Wing is where you find me. And then if you go to on the social media, CaliforniaLoveDrop.org is our, and you can go to the GoFundMe page if you want to. We just found a new guy that's going to make us some tote bags for people to make small donations. I'm like, we find people left and right that say, hey, we got this. Can you use it? I'm like, yeah, we can use it. So we turn and we repurpose everything we can into getting more funds so we can help the kids and whoever's in need.
Awesome.
Well,
pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pleasure doing another episode, Mr. Benjamin. And remember, guys, that everything was impossible till someone did it.
Yep.
So, guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. You can find us on YouTube at youtube.com/The Fight Within Podcast. Find us on all audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, anywhere you guys like to listen to it. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for continuing to listen to it and watch it. We can see the growth on our analytics, and just want to thank you guys for supporting us. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Kingdom Nutrition. Make sure you guys go and visit their site over at kingdomnutrition.com and enter promo code MF5010 to get 10% off your next purchase. Kingdom Nutrition carries the best sports supplements on the market. They manufacture and curate their own line of supplements with the highest quality ingredients, including a lean protein, weight gainer protein, pre-workout, BCAAs, and an array of other products. They've recently created the world's first vegan chickpea protein, and it tastes amazing. I'm a big dude. I like food, and I like chocolate. So when they told me it comes in chocolate and vanilla, I got really happy. But if you're a workout enthusiast and you want to change up your diet, change up your protein, go check out their vanilla chickpea protein. It mixes well with anything. It'll blend great with a smoothie. So to get your hands on any of these products, just make sure and go visit kingdomnutrition.com. Remember to enter promo code MFW10 and get 10% off your next purchase. Let's go.